afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us for this month's Lunchbox Learning program. We got moved into the big room because this is such a fabulous program. I'm so excited that you're all here today. Lunchbox Learning is a monthly program. We bring in speakers to talk about state, local, and national history. And today we are welcoming a very special lady, Mable Owens Clarke, to the Upcountry History Museum. This program would not be possible without our sponsor, Hainsworth Sinclair Boyd, or without all of you showing up. So thank you for being here today. To give a little bit of a longer introduction about Mable, I'm going to be welcoming Mr. Carlton Owen to the stage.
Thanks, Sarah. It's so good to be here. So good to see such a great crowd. The roads have been closed down, so we're going to be here the rest of the afternoon. So no problem. People stand up and say, this person needs no introduction, then they go on for about 15 minutes. Mable Clarke is my first cousin because she's an Owens and I'm an Owen. The problem is the Owens family was the rich side of the family. They could afford an S on their name. We are the poor side and we're still trying to dig out of that hole. Mable is the matriarch of Soapstone Church. Her great-grandparents gave the land that became the church, the one-room school site. She is a deacon. She is the master of the fish fries for 22 years. She has won the Order of the Palmetto, the highest civilian honor in the state of South Carolina. She is a Governor's Award winner for the Preservation SC about historic preservation in the state. Grand Marshal of the Pickens Christmas Parade, and I missed that one. I want to call my cousin up because I want to hear her stories. You don't want to hear me. Come on, Mable. Let's go.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Oh my, what an amazing group of people here today. I am just so excited to be here. First and foremost, giving honor to God, the ruler and the master of my life. I am so excited to be here. And I thank you all for trucking out in this little misty rain to listen to a little old lady speak to you for a minute. I am so thankful for the opportunity. I want to thank the Upstate History Museum for allowing me this opportunity, and to thank you all for traveling out today. Also, I will say, my beloved Liberia community and the Soapstone Baptist Church, especially during February, 1 month of the year that focuses on Black history in America. Black people were among the first settlers in America, but not necessary by choice. In 1619, 20 enslaved people were brought to Jamestown, Virginia. Enslaved people, kicking off a Tourist era in our history. Slavery in South Carolina did not end with January 1st, 1863, Emancipation and Proclamation. It officially ended with the end of the Civil War in April of 1865. The history of my community, my people, and even me at nearly 83 years old, I am a historic artifact myself. Is the story of what is to be a person of color in America. In the next few minutes, I want to share just a few stories of my personal experience as a Black person. In 1865, 600 free slaves left on Liberia Road. Others came from far away and some was nearby. They came to the Pickens County mountains of northern Pickens, worked in exchange for land to craft their own chapter in American history. The Liberia community and the Soapstone Baptist Church, it is important to know that the 40 acres and the mule was a myth. It never happened. And I am still waiting for my 40 acres and my mule. Black children weren't allowed to go to a white public school, including me. Children in the Liberia community was taught on the Soapstone Rock, then in a small, rough cabin, and later in the original church built around the 1900s, and finally in our own one-room schoolhouse in the early 1920s. But just let me tell you, I had the opportunity to attend that one-room school up until the 5th grade. And at that particular time, the superintendent sent a young man out to the house and said, we have to close the school. The government was no longer provide money to keep a one-room school open. And so one day, the young man showed up in the yard and said, we're gonna close the school, said to my mother, we're gonna close the school. I'm gonna bring out some books in 2 weeks, and you're gonna have to teach your children at home. I will leave enough books here so you can share them throughout the Liberia community. My mother said to him, no, don't bring any books. My children, the children here in Liberia, will get an education like any other child. So, I'll tell you what my mother and father did. She said, Chris, back that time, you know, women wasn't allowed to drive, I guess, because my mother never learned to drive. He said, drive me out to Pickens and let me speak to the superintendent out there. He went and spoke to the superintendent. He expressed the same thing. The school will be closed, and you definitely would have to teach children from home. My mother said, I run a big farm. I can't allow the time to teach children at home. So let me tell you, my mother looked down on his desk with an index card and said, could you please write down the address in Columbia where the headquarters is for the school departments? So he said, it's no point in you going down there, Miss Owens. They're gonna tell you the same thing. She said, just write me the address. So she took the card, got back in the truck with my dad. She said, that was on a Friday. And she said, Chris, that's my father's name, we going to Columbia. He said, my mother's name is Lula. Don't ask me why he always called her Lou. Lou, we don't even know how to get to Columbia. And he said, I don't even know if this old white truck will even make it there. So she said, it's okay. But she said, we're gonna stop at every gas station and ask for directions till we get to Columbia. So my father was a little hesitant, but he knew he could not win with my mother. So that Monday, she left strict orders for us to take care of the farm and feed up all the animals. And they left out about 7:30 in the morning, headed to Columbia. She had that little index card with her. And let me tell you, to make a story short, she made it there. She went in and she talked to the official there. And he said, after she gave him the story that the school was closing, you mean to tell me you two old people drove all the way down here from Pickens to Columbia? She said, yes, because I want my children to have an education and not for me to teach them at home. He immediately got on the phone, called back to Pickens and said, I want you to put on a school bus, and so those children can be bused to a public school. And sure enough, all 9 of us children, we was wondering if Mom and Dad was gonna make it back home. Now, it's starting to get dark, And they had given us instructions to make sure we feed up all the animals and everything. We done did that. The sun is dropping, and still no mom and no dad. I don't know, those of you who has been to Soapstone, you know you have to pass Soapstone Church first. And that old truck didn't need a muffle on it. It was real loud. So about 7 o'clock that evening, we all standing in the yard and saying, "Woo, we hear that old truck. That mom and dad is coming." And we blocked the driveway, so daddy's blowing the horn like for us to move out of the way. And we all holler, "Are we going to go to school? Are we going to be going to school?" And mom said, "We're going to have a school bus that's going to pick you up and going to be taking you from Pickens. Ones that's in the low grades be dropped off in Pickens, and the other one be transferred to Easley." So, matter of fact, when I got a little older, I had the opportunity to drive a school bus. So as you know, I've been around for a little while. But let me just tell you a little about the school in the 5th grade, okay? That particular school with one teacher. She had to cook lunch, and we would go out for recess, and she would send us down to the spring to bring water up. At that time in that school, there was no electric lights like we have here today. It was no heat in there. So all of us would go down to the spring, and at that time while she was cooking, while she was preparing our lunch, that's when we had our recess. But let me just tell you what recess was like. We had some marbles, horseshoe, and we get underneath the schoolhouse. Some of you in here, you must, I see this all so much younger than me. But we used to go underneath the schoolhouse and used to play doodly bug, come out of the hole. Let me see some hands in here that know something about a doodly bug. Somebody in here is almost old as me. Okay, so that was all we had at that time to play with. So now it's time to go back. And when I was in the 1st grade, which the farm is right next door to the church, let me just tell you a little story about Mabel. She's always been a little busy bee. And so I had started going to school there before I was even time for me to enroll in the 1st grade because the parents taking care of the farm. So when I got in the 1st grade, they teach the 1st grade first and then they keep going on up. So when she finished with me, I got up, I'm going out the door, I'm going back home just to play. Because the 1st grade is over, she's going on to the 2nd grade. That teacher turned around and said to me, "Sit down. You stay here till school is over." But let me just tell you the benefit of that. By the time I got to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, I knew exactly what was going on. It was just a breeze. But in closing on the school, just let me tell you how beneficiary going to that one school has been. I look back and I see how it has dropped down from even the ones like with me that was going there, their children, their offspring, they went on. We have doctors, we have electricians, we have ministers. I mean, we have all kind of people that came out of that one-room school has elevated to another level. But in saying that one-room schoolhouse, you'll have the opportunity to walk in it again. I'm so grateful for Harper Brothers here in Greenville, and my thanks to my cousin Carlton here that connected me with Harper Brothers that came out. The school has been completely, totally renovated. I worked so hard and I prayed a long time for God to send somebody to help me get that school renovated. We have 12, thanks to Carlton, we have 12 desks in there, those old-fashioned type. If any of you went to school, how you used to slide in from the side. And we have 12 desks, one big blackboard back in there, and we still got the old wooden stove in there that kept me warm while we was going to school. So we should be having a grand opening, and just watch Facebook and you will be notified of the date. Now, just moving on here. Let me just tell you about the land out there at Soapstone. In the 1950s, whites took the lands of black farmers in my community. Took it, not paid for it. I want to make sure you hear me. They took the land from black farmers. I had the chance to go through that terrific time when things like that happened. In 1950, the late 50s, on a Sunday afternoon, my parents always talked us in the house about one day they may come and take the farm away from us. And they had prepared my 7 brothers to be prepared in case that happened. But you know, when you're growing up as a child and you listen to what your parents are saying, you just take it as, well, is that really going to happen? Yes, it did happen. On that Sunday afternoon was at Soapstone Church. And service is over, and my father said his sister wasn't at church this particular Sunday. So he went to Marietta to check on her because she never missed church. He said to my mother, walk the children on home, leave me a plate of food on the table. So we go home, we ate, and now we done finished cleaning up, and we sitting out on the porch because we didn't have any toys or anything to play with at that time. We had one bicycle, and again, the marbles and the horseshoes, that was it. So we sitting out on the porch on this Sunday afternoon. All of a sudden, my mother jumps up and she says, we hear gunshots just going out like crazy, just boom, boom. And at that time, we didn't have no paved road. We looked down the old dirt road and I saw my uncle Clance Glenn. He was running and dodging from one side of the road to the other. I'm talking about an old man. And when he got to our house, he said they have came and shot a hole. He was milking up for the night. Had shot a hole in my milk bucket. And it said, get up and use that N-word. This is our farm now. But what they would do, they were smart. They would wait till you had did all the labor, picking the cotton, and they knew that very next week that the cotton gin people was gonna come and gather the crop. And that was the way that the farmers made their money. And I love that time too, because that was a time when we got new shoes, 1 pair of shoes a year. So he makes it to our house, Uncle Clarence Glenn make it to our house, and he said, I lost my farm, I lost everything. Immediately, now just remember now, follow the story, my father's not home, he's in Marietta. Mama jumped up and said, boys, get the guns. The cotton, we just finished picking all the cotton, the gin people supposed to be here next week. Said, I think I know how to go through the woods. This is mother talking. I praise my mother. I think of Rosa Parks and Harriet Tubman as I tell this story. But she jumped up and told the boys to get the guns, gave Uncle Clarence my daddy's gun. She said, I think I know how to go through the woods and cut them off. Mother ran to the barn and got a pitchfork. Those of you that don't know what a pitchfork is, some young people in here, and she took the pitchfork and she lined them up. She was the leader of the trail. She put us girls, all 3 girls. She said, I'm gonna put you girls underneath the bed. I'm gonna lock the door, do not talk, don't look out the window. In case they kick the door in, just stay quiet. But let me tell you, my mother cut through the woods and she cut them off. And when she got close, probably about as close as that door back there to them, they didn't even hear my mother coming up on them. And they was leaned up against the car. They were drinking either Budweiser or Pabst Blue Ribbon, I don't know which one. They were refreshing themselves up to come to take over our farm. So when mother got that close, she made strict instruction. She said, when I raise the pitchfork in the air, let the bullets roll. And if you happen to, the ones up front, if you happen to run out, throw your gun back to my little baby brother Clifton. He would fill the gun back up and get it back to him. So we got to keep the heat on them because we need to save this farm because otherwise we're going to be sleeping out in the woods tonight and all the hard work we done picking this cotton. So sure enough, mother raised the pitchfork up in the air, and the bullets rolled. And they went down to a little country store there called the little Pumpkin Town grocery store, and we traded in there. So when they went down there, they was bleeding up and everything. One brother, they said, got a tire and all that, and went in and asked Mr. Burgess that run the store. We used to go in there and trade all the time, pick blackberries and trade off blackberries, and whatever we could pick strawberries for flour and sugar. So when the Klansmen went in there, asked Mr. Burgess, can you help us get a mob up tonight to go out there to kill off those Owens End people? I'm gonna let you fill the blanks in there. And Mr. Burgess said, those are good people. I am not gonna help you get a mob up. So they bought bandages and bandaged themselves up. And let me tell you, he said, well, if you go out there, you are bleeding now. I doubt if you get out alive, because Mr. Chris Owens loves his family. So now they done left the store. Mr. Burgess gets on the phone, called the police department, and tell him, you better get out to Liberia Road. It's gonna be a killing out there tonight. Because he said, because when it get dark, that's when they're gonna come back. Sure enough, now he called the police. The next thing, Daddy done made it home now with the blue lights. And just let me tell you how God worked things out. The police that got out of the car, my Lord of mercy, it was the same old police that came at least twice a week, sit at our table and ate our food. But let me just go a little further here. He opened up his trunk of the car and he said, tell those boys to bring the guns out here. And he come there so much, so I ran up to him and I said, why are you gonna take our guns? We don't have no way to defend ourselves. And he said, I'm not taking no guns. I'm gonna give you all enough ammunition that you can fight them off all night long. To God be the glory. So now he leaves all the ammunition, goes inside, give my brothers instructions. First, he said, they're gonna be back tonight now. They're gonna be back as soon as it get dark. But he said, you're gonna have to fight, because you're not gonna have a farm. And can you imagine how hard that we had worked on that 159-acre farm, raising cotton, just to provide some money for a family of 11. So now the police done gave the ammunition, now it's getting dark. And Daddy had already gave the boys instructions. Each one of them knew where their window was. And he put my mother and us girls in a closet and pushed a big wardrobe against the door. I heard my daddy says, boys, take your spot. And I said to myself, Mama, they coming. And the policeman had instructed them, let them shoot first so don't make no mistake. But let me tell you, didn't that many cars go past that little dirt road? No way. So anyway, here come the car, and here go the first shot. And I said to Mom, they're shooting our window panes out. She said, we can get more window panes. And so then Daddy said, boys, it's time to go to war. And they started just shooting and shooting and shooting. And finally, it was all over. They went out of there with they only had 3 tires that was able to keep the Klansmen to get away. And so today, my parents set presidency for Liberia Road. I'm going to move on a little further. My cousin over here has given me close instructions that I could talk to you about most stories here till 12 o'clock tonight. Now we're going to go to the burning of the black church by the Klansmen. In the wave of a black church burning in the year of 1967. They came. They burned Soapstone Baptist Church to the ground. That church was built by the slaves. And let me tell you, before they were able to build a church, they had church out on, those of you, how many in here been to Soapstone? Let me see the hands. Oh, yeah. You seen that big old boulder out there, that big Soapstone boulder? And I'm going to explain about Soapstone, because some people, when they come to, I give a lot of tours there, and they say, why you gave this church name Soapstone? That is a soapstone rock, that big boulder that you see. The Indian was the first on that land. They ran them off up into Cherokee, and then they brought us in. So now they burned the church, a church that was built by slaves. Now they had service on that rock, and as they picked their cotton, all of them pooled their money together and bought some lumber and built that Soapstone church. And the church got burned down, the church that I was baptized in, and where I gave my life to God. And let me just tell you, in burning that church, there was only one thing left of it. It was a bell. And I'm going to tell you what the bell was used for in that church. The bell was up in the, help me, Carlton. Yeah, what you call it? A bell tower. It was way up high. And so it hung down with a long rope, like a rope you could even pull a car or something with. What that bell was used for, they didn't have telephone. I just want you to see how far we have grown. We got cell phones, you got them in your pocket now, or somewhere. And they didn't have no means to call nobody back then. So when someone passed away, now remember 600 free slaves there on Liberia Road, and they put the free slaves out there because they said the land wasn't fit for nothing. So now that bell, they would ring it 3 times. One of the deacons, somebody would go 3 times, and they would ring it, and that was a signal to send out to all of the people in Liberia, somebody has passed away. And they all would come to Soapstone to find out who has gone on. And that bell that they rang way back then, I have that bell. And let me tell you, that bell, we are going to have a celebration on those grounds out there very soon. So watch your Facebook. And I'm going to ring that bell 3 times. And I just wish I had more time. I just can't express to you enough what that Soapstone Church has meant to me in that little one-room school. And because of that schoolhouse and that Soapstone Church has built me for who I am now. Not when I ran away at 17 and went to Boston and did all the stuff that people do there. My roots was there. I came back when they was going to, my dad called me on the phone at my office, I was in Boston, and told me some man offered him $60 for a 159-acre farm. I said, Dad, I'll be on the plane in the morning. You're not selling that farm. He said, well, all you children have just gone to different places, and Mom and I are lonely out here. I went to my boss, and I told him, I said, I got an emergency. I got to go to South Carolina. I got on the plane that morning, came to Greenville Airport. And let me tell you, it should have been a highwayman somewhere to stop me. Because I swear, I was driving as fast as I could to get home, get to Punkintown. And because my dad instructed me, he said, well, he'll be back here at 6 o'clock to bring me the money. I said, Daddy, do not take that money. So I made it there at 3:30. Walked into the house. Sure enough, the man showed back up. He was on time a few minutes early. Brought them $60 in a brown paper bag. Pulled it out on the dining room table and said, Chris, that's a lot of money. What you gonna do with it? So by this time I had taken a little nap myself. So Daddy said, baby, get up, he's here. So I get up and he said, I saw the money, I immediately just grabbed it and put it right back in that little brown paper bag. And I invited him to leave. I said, this property is not for sale. And he addressed me, little girl, that didn't sit well with me. What are you going to do with 159 acres? And my daddy spoke up and said, my baby girl here is going to keep this land. She's coming home. And I moved back home in 1983. And we still got the farm. Matter of fact, I'm living on the farm. I even look at that spot sometime. Dad said to me that morning, I'm just gonna be quick, Carlton. I'm gonna hush. I know he's giving me the cutoff. So that next morning, let me tell you, my father said to me, he said, come on, I'm gonna put you in this truck and we're gonna ride around the farm. I said, what are we gonna do, Dad? He said, I want you to pick out, you say you're coming home to build a house. So I want you to pick out where you want to build. Since you're the baby, you can have the first choice. Sure enough, he got me in the little truck, drove me around. I said, Dad, I was born right here in the cotton field. You didn't get the buggy back down here in time. So I said, I haven't forgot what my mother said. And I said, I want my house right in the cotton field so I can look down there where you didn't get the buggy in time for me. But saying that, I'm going to get to my closing. It's more I would like to tell you, but it's been a blessing to be back. It's been a blessing in so many ways. I've been able to get back into Soapstone Church and find myself again back home in the country. But I'm going to tell you a story that's really hard for me to tell, and I'm going to take my seat. My whole thoughts, I hope no 10-year-old child like I was would have to ever go through a shootout and have to go through that. Even till today, there's a video that resonates here. But let me just tell you about that video that resonates here. Thank God for I had a real strong Christian mother. I have not allowed any of that that happened then to fester in here. I had to flush it and go to higher grounds. And another thing about that, it was so many white families that helped us pick cotton, and we went to pick cotton. With all the things that's going on in today's world, we all ate together, we all sit together, we all prayed together. And I just thank God that I had the opportunity to be connected with the Soapstone Church in so many ways. And I want to thank all of you too. A whole lot of you all supported, even if you just came and bought a plate of fish. I see many faces here that came to those fish fries for 22 years. But my mother became ill. My brother found my mother in the garden picking some squash to make lunch. Mother was bent over, and when he found her, she still had a squash that was gripped. It was very hot on that day, and she had a stroke from the heat being too hot, just a heat stroke. My other mother ended up in Easy Baptist Hospital for 2 months. And let me tell you, she was there for 2 months. I slept on that floor beside that bed every day. I never left. But let me just tell you what. One morning at that hospital, the doctors kept telling me, pull the plug, pull the plug. You know, she's old, pull the plug. I said, no. I said, God haven't spoken to me and said, pull the plug. 5:30 on a Tuesday morning, Mother raised up out of that bed. Oh, I done forgot to feed my chickens. She had not, she was in a coma, had not spoken 2 months, but see how God worked things? And I ran in the hallway and asked the doctors and nurse, it was just like a miracle happened. They couldn't any of them believe it. And the doctor said, Mabel, keep talking to her so she can keep going, keep talking to her. And I had in my pocket, she loved those lollipops on a stick, and I started rolling, and she said, oh, you got me some candy. Praise God, I brought my mother home to the little family house. Mother lived 3 years after that stroke. Praise God. So she called me to the bedside, and every day I was there, even after I brought her home. Most of y'all know my husband, Charles, he had a law salon, a hairstylist, and he said to me, Mabel, don't stay over here at night. Go to your mother's house across the road. He said, they need you, and so you can watch over them. He said, I only got one request. Walk back across the road. We'll have a cup of tea together, say our prayers, and I'm off to work. And I go back over to the house. So this day, I made my way back across to Mother's house. And I said, Mom, what you want for breakfast? She said, I don't want any breakfast today. I said, Mama, you always eat and tell me what you want. She said, I'm getting ready to go home to sleep in Jesus' arms. I said, Mom, you're not going anywhere. She said, yes, my time is up. And she said, you trying to take care of me and your father, and you just gonna break yourself down. I said, Mama, I am fine. I said, now, what can I get you for breakfast? She said, just fluid. Just bring me some orange juice. Give me a cup of coffee and some orange juice. I'm good. The next morning, dinner time comes, the same conversation. Mother wouldn't eat. But the third day, that morning, she said, baby, I'm getting ready to go home. But before I go, she put up 2 fingers. She said, I want you to go to Greenwood to Scott Tower, get your oldest brother out of there. They're breaking in on those senior citizens down there. And I want you to bring him home to the family house, because I'm going to be gone, and I want you to take care of him till God send him home to me. And the reason with my brother, he became paralyzed and stopped walking at the age of 13. But my mother gave him so much therapy with his legs and everything, got him back working, and he used to come, he was able to learn to drive, and it used to be a bakery here on Augusta Road. Clausen Bakery, yes. He worked there, and he met his wife there and got married. But as you know, when polio and stuff hit you, once you get an age, it comes back on you. And when the polio came back on, sadly, his wife made the choice to leave him. But, so that's why my mother wanted me to go and get him and bring him home. And she said, will you do that? That's the first thing. She said, will you do that? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, give me your hand. She took my hand and she gripped it. And she said, do not let the doors of Soapstone Church close. Will you promise me that you would do it? She said, out of the 9 children that I have, I know you always done what I asked you to do. Do not let the doors of Soapstone Church close. Your great-grandfather was the founder of the Soapstone Baptist Church. And my great-grandfather's name was Joseph McJunkins. And she said, look me in my eye. Will you promise me that the doors will never be closed there? And that is why I started the fish fry. But let me just tell you, while she was telling me that, maybe 5 minutes went by. God sent the angels wrapped around that bed. Mother left and went on to glory. I want to thank you for this opportunity. Continue to pray.
Wait a minute. You burned the church, but you didn't build it back, Mabel. Celebrate
thought she was giving me the sign to show. Okay, the church is burned. The Klansmen burned the church to the ground. Like I told you, the bell was the only thing that was left. That Sunday, the pastor said, we don't have any money to build the church back. Go, all you members, go and find a church of your choice. My mother jumped up and she said, Soapstone Church will be built back. The pastor said, Sister Owens, how are you going to build a church back? We only got $38 in the treasury. She said, we got a big old farm down there. And so on every Saturday, we'll go from Punkintown all the way into Greenville, selling vegetables, chickens, milk, butter, anything she could find. And my nephew sitting back there kind of testified to that because he was on that peddling truck. Hold your hand up, Reverend Hendricks. He had many rides on that back of that truck. And on that Friday, we had to load that truck up, and it'd be so full. And you know how children do? Why they got us putting this much stuff on truck? They're not going to sell all of that stuff. You know, we didn't say that in front of our parents. And let me tell you, the pastor said, my mother said, I'm going to go peddling, and I'm going to sell the vegetables off that farm, anything I can get. And he said, well, Miss Owens, if you can do that, I know how to lay cinder blocks. And she said, be here every Tuesday. So they would go peddling on a Saturday. That Monday, she said, Chris, come on, drive me to the place to get me some cement blocks. So every Tuesday, the church was burned in 1967. Mother and father had that doors open in 1 year, 1968. That church that you came to, not the dining hall, my parents sold vegetables to build that church. And maybe that's why I did the fish fry. I called that church the vegetable church. But the church got built back, and it's just amazing. It burned in 67. The strength that my parents had to get it finished and done in 1 year. And sometimes it takes a carpenter, somebody to build in your house. When they built my house, they were there almost 2 years. 1 year, they had Soapstone Doors Church open. And I just say, to God be the glory. And I want to thank you all so much for coming out and allowing me to share the story that I lived through. And like I said earlier, nothing resonates in my heart. I am free out of that, so I can be able to reach and help somebody else on that journey. Thank you for coming.
Okay, hold on. Sit back down. She doesn't get the last word, I do. She did pretty good. I have to guide her. This is my wife's over in Mississippi visiting some of our other relatives. They all look like me because we didn't stay out in the cotton patch. This is what happens to you if you're out in the sun all summer long. I've got relatives over there that I'm not proud to say are my relatives, but I am proud to call Mable a dear friend and a relative. We have two members of the Soapstone Preservation Board here, Peggy Baxter. Wait, Peggy, and Andy Douglas. Andy, if you'll come up here a minute. If you'll come up here a minute, I need your help on something.
I want you to come.
Andy, do what I tell you to do. All of the history Mable talked about, I haven't been a part of. But I was with a corporation, and we're going to have her just here for a second. So just stand by, hold on to that.
Thank you.
And
Am I doing right?
Yeah, you're doing right.
I traveled every week. I would get on an airplane either Sunday afternoon or Monday morning, fly somewhere literally around the world, come back on Friday night or Saturday and do it all again the next week. And my wife kept saying, let's go up to Pickens County to that fish fry on this third Saturday. I said, do you realize how many times I've eaten out this week? You realize how far it is from Simpsonville up to northern Pickens County? I have no interest in going there. Wives tend to continue to suggest you do something until you do it. So in 2020, we went up one day and met Mable, and Mable and I found out we were relatives. And that was also the year that the part of the history that I'm aware of started taking place. She talked about the church. Well, her fish fries led to the need for a fellowship hall and a kitchen on the back of the church. So they took out a $150,000 mortgage. The fish fries were paying for that. The mortgage was up to date. And in 2020, the bank called the mortgage because they had a developer that was willing to pay off the remaining $50,000 and push the church down and build some apartments.
In the schoolhouse.
90 days to generate $50,000. Andy Douglas and a lot of other folks, and this is when we engaged, helped raise that $50,000, and shortly before the 90 days, they took the money to the bank and paid off the mortgage. And I think the bank was the most shocked people on the planet. In 2021, we worked with Upstate Forever and the South Carolina Conservation Bank and placed a conservation easement over that property. Brad, thank you for forming Upstate Forever, and I was the token Republican founding board member with Brad. How many years ago? Almost a quarter of a century ago. Today, that land, whether or not the church is able to stay open, as the demographics continue to change, it will always be a historic site to the legacy of both the Cherokee and the African American people that settled there, and for the last 160 years have had a people of faith on that site. It cannot be taken. It is a perpetual conservation easement. In 2024, the church buried, I believe, 8 members. It continues to decline. The community that was once majority minority is now majority Caucasian again. In 2022, we formed the Soapstone Preservation Endowment with one purpose: to help protect and promote the history and legacy of the Liberia community and Soapstone Baptist Church. Peggy, Andy, Diane Smock was one of the founding board members, have worked over the last 3 years now. We've generated a little over $500,000. Many people in this room have given to that. We need to get to $1 million. Andy has something for those of you that have not given. Just raise your hand, and if you've already given, you can take one and give more. There is no limit. We're not one of those places that say, no, you've given too much. But we want you to consider helping us out. We plan to get to that $1 million goal by the end of this year so that there will be financial resources to forever protect the story and the legacy of that community. We've even had people fly in from Philadelphia today for this meeting. Andrew Cressman is back there. He's in with his family, but they've helped the church. Many of you have helped. And the Soapstone Preservation Endowment is the tool we're going to use perpetually to make sure that history and legacy is there. Now, we've got a couple of minutes left. Bandy, you go ahead, and if people want that, do what I tell you to do, Bandy. Maybe?
You want me to go out?
Yeah, go. You go.
Okay, Andy, your paycheck from the endowment board has been rescinded. If there are a couple of questions of Mable, all right, you're going to have to stand up and speak loudly because I have a terrible hearing problem, and I'll translate.
What about the cemetery that's there?
Oh, yeah. Okay, the slave cemetery, once I came back to Soapstone Church from living in Boston for 21 years, my husband Charles noticed this truck was just cutting timber, and couldn't figure out. He asked me, Mabel, do you know where the church property line is? The church has 6 acres of land, which my dad cut off from the farm because it's an outgrown crop of the soapstone rock. And he says, so I hired a surveyor. He came. In a few days, he was back, and he says, I got sad news for you. They have completely cleaned all soapstone trees off. All the timber is gone. So by the time I got in touch with the police office and stuff, they had pulled their trucks out and just left us hanging with all the timber that we lost. But let me tell you, Sometimes when something bad happened, God got something good to back it up with. So the other thing he said to me, now Mabel, I came up on all these graves that just growed up in a forest. It's just grown up. And I said to him, oh my goodness, I said, I know what that is. That's the slave cemetery. My parents would never take us children there because it was too painful for them, they said. I would listen to them talk about the slave cemetery, but I never had the opportunity to see it as a child when I was growing up. This surveyor carried me there, and we went through this thicket with trees and everything, and I could see some of the graves. Let me tell you, I went home and I wrestled with that for about 2 weeks. And I prayed and I asked God, what can I do to give these slaves that have no voice? What can I do? And let me tell you what I did. I sent a letter out to all my sister churches and asked them if they would come with bulldozers, chainsaws, or anything, just to try to cut a path in there. And so we could just kind of see where the graves were at. And I said, if you will come out, I promise you, I'll give you one of the best lunches you ever had. And I think that's all I had to say. That day, at 7 o'clock, 35 people showed up with chainsaws and everything they could do to clear a path through. 11 o'clock come, we still haven't gotten to a grave. They just cutting and chopping, no grave yet. I kept my promise, I made them lunch, and I said to them, well, listen, I thank you for coming. Can we schedule a new date? They said, no. We're going to go back if we have to be there till 3 o'clock tonight. We're going to at least see one grave. Well, let me tell you, it must be something about 3 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, whoever was up front that was still cutting, start clapping their hands for everybody to come and see. Now, after that, I had to go through Pickens County, and you know, you have to go through some political rhetoric, but I'm pretty good at that now. So we was able to get, right now it's been cleaned off. I got a cul-de-sac where you can drive in, you can turn around. We get buses that comes up from the low country down towards Charleston and Savannah. And I tell you one thing about Soapstone. It's not a day go by that you don't see 2 or 3 people that come there that's standing on the rock. And also Furman University, their children come and sit on that rock. And when they working on the essay or whatever, Clemson comes, children come and show out. And Clemson is my little fraternity boys, and especially, so I see someone here in the audience from Clemson today that has been so diligently, Rusty Gill, I'm gonna call you out. No, you gotta stand. This man right here from Clemson, when I was preparing those meals, would come and help me peel sweet potatoes. And I mean, help me chop up the collard greens and do all that stuff. And let me tell you, if you want a good pound cake baked, that's the man to see. And Rusty, you have been such a gem for Soapstone. And Slave Cemetery is open. I want you all to come. I'll give you a tour. Can I just get all y'all just come, just get together and just get on a bus and come one day? You know what? I just might cook you some fish. But one thing I don't want to omit. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. The pastor of the church, Reverend Chester Trower, been with us for 13 years. A great pastor, comes there every Sunday from Pottersville. And we have service that starts at 11 o'clock. He has us out of there at 12:15. And he's an excellent speaker, a man of God. And I'm just going to invite you all to come and sit with me one Sunday. Sit with me. Sit with me. My heart would be filled for everyone in here say, I was at Upcountry. We here today, Mabel. Everybody got quiet on me. But I know some of you are going to show up. And thank you for the opportunity. And I'm finished.
Okay. All right. 2 things. I'm only 71, and my memory is bad. Don Lineback is also on the board of the Soapstone Preservation Endowment. and I don't think I'm missing anybody else. I think all the rest of them are somewhere else today. Pastor Trower actually was going to be here, and he had another commitment he had to get to. But I want to thank you for coming out this morning, or this afternoon now, and hearing my cousin, hearing these stories. To me, I grew up in Mississippi during the Civil Rights era, and I've admitted to Mable many times I was not overly sensitive to what was going on in the community around me. My school was integrated when I was in the 9th grade. Many of the kids that came from the black school across town to the white school I was in, we'd played together all the time. But then we were in the same school, and things went well for a number of years. But then I was student body president my senior year, and all hell broke loose. We had walkouts, we had riots, we had all kinds of trouble. Most of it, I believe, was fomented by other people that wanted to see the South do bad. But it has been a joy to work with Mable and Andy and Don and Diane and whoever else I just left out. Peggy, thank you.
Peggy Bear.
If you have other questions, we have the book about the story of Liberia that Dr. Kokashaw from Clemson wrote. Mable will be downstairs and she'll sign some of those if you want to purchase those. I think they're $30, is that right?
Yes.
If you have other questions, let's let her get down and do that. If you want to meet her for questions, let's do that down there so we don't hold everybody else up. But again, thank you for coming. Thank you for participating. Thank you for your support.